Hello and welcome back to the Dusty Codex. When we think of the fall of Rome, we picture epic invasions, Goths sacking cities, and Vandals sweeping across North Africa. It's a story of vast, violent barbarian hordes. But in the far western corner of the Roman Empire, a different story unfolded. We are always curious to know where our stories are traveling to and where your corner of the world is. Please take a moment to let us know in the comments where you are watching from today. On December 31st, 406 AD, a coalition of Germanic peoples, the Vandals, the Alans, and the Suebi, crossed the frozen Rhine River. This was no mere raid. It was a migration, a desperate search for new lands within the crumbling Roman Empire. While the Vandals and Alans moved south, the Suebi pushed into Hispania, modern Spain and Portugal. There, they carved out their own kingdom, not as a temporary camp, but as a long-lasting, sophisticated state. They endured for an astonishing 170 years, from 409 AD until their final defeat in 585 AD. For almost 2 centuries, they ruled over a significant portion of the Iberian Peninsula, becoming the first barbarian kingdom in the West to convert to Catholicism. They minted coins, issued laws, and maintained a distinct identity. Yet for all their achievements, their empire faded into the footnotes of history, overshadowed by their more famous and eventually victorious rivals, the Visigoths. When the Suebi, Vandals, and Alans entered Hispania in 409 AD, the land was still nominally Roman. However, Roman authority was weak, unable to defend against the waves of migrants. By 411 AD, the 3 groups divided the territory amongst themselves. The Suebi settled in the northwest, in the province of Galicia, which largely corresponds to modern-day Galicia, in Spain and northern Portugal. The first recognized Suebic king was Hermeric. Unlike many other Germanic warlords, Hermeric saw the long game. He understood that simply raiding wasn't sustainable. He wanted a permanent home for his people. Initially, the Suebi were not numerous. Estimates range from 20,000 to 30,000 people, including women and children. They ruled over a much larger Hispano-Roman population. Integration, rather than conquest, was their path. The Suebi quickly established their own capital at Braga, Bracara Augusta, a former Roman city. They began to mint their own coins, initially crude imitations of Roman currency, but soon with their own distinctive Suebic symbols. These coins weren't just for trade. They were a powerful statement of sovereignty, declaring the Suebic kings as the new legitimate rulers of Galicia. They largely kept the Roman administrative structure in place, integrating Roman institutions and Hispano-Roman elites into their governance. They recognized that the complex Roman system was far more efficient than their own tribal customs. Like most Germanic tribes who converted to Christianity, the Suebi initially adopted Arianism. This was a form of Christianity that held Christ was subordinate to God the Father, differing from the Nicene Catholic doctrine. However, in the mid-6th century, something remarkable happened. Under the influence of powerful figures like Bishop Martin of Braga, the Suebic kings began to consider a full conversion to Nicene Catholicism. By the 550s, under King Ariamir and later King Miro, the Suebi officially abandoned Arianism and converted to Catholicism. They were the first barbarian kingdom in the West to do so, preceding the Franks and Visigoths by decades. This conversion was politically astute. It brought them closer to the Hispano-Roman majority and the wider Catholic world, strengthening their kingdom's legitimacy and stability. The councils of Braga were key in solidifying this new religious identity. The Suebi didn't just exist. They actively defended and expanded their territory. They fought numerous wars against the Vandals and Alans, pushing them further south. Rome itself, though weak, eventually had to acknowledge the Suebic kingdom. Treaties were made, and for a time, the Suebi were considered federati, or allies, within the crumbling imperial framework. Under kings like Rechila and Rechiar, the Suebi expanded their territory significantly, conquering much of Lusitania, southern Portugal, and Baetica, southern Spain, from the remaining Roman forces. For a time, they controlled most of the Iberian Peninsula. The Suebi were a small people who achieved something truly remarkable. They didn't just conquer, they adapted. They blended their Germanic traditions with Roman institutions and, crucially, embraced a new faith that connected them to the wider Christian world. Their gold and silver artifacts, their coinage, and their very existence speak of a vibrant, distinct culture that thrived in the twilight of the Roman Empire. If these stories, of cultures adapting, of small groups building lasting legacies in the face of immense change, are what you seek, I invite you to subscribe to the Dusty Codex. Your support allows us to continue unearthing these vital, often forgotten pieces of human history. But a new, more powerful Germanic force was rising in Hispania, the Visigoths. After their defeat by the Franks at Vouillé in 507 AD, the Visigoths lost most of their territory in Gaul and solidified their rule over the rest of the Iberian Peninsula. For decades, the Suebi maintained a tense coexistence with the Arian Visigoths. But in the late 6th century, a formidable Visigothic king, Leovigild, rose to power. He was determined to unify all of Hispania under his rule and, crucially, under the Arian faith. Leovigild launched a series of campaigns against the Suebi. The Suebic kingdom, weakened by internal conflicts and vastly outnumbered, fought bravely but could not withstand the onslaught. In 585 AD, after a series of defeats, the last Suebic king, Andica, was overthrown by Leovigild. The independent kingdom of the Suebi came to an end. Leovigild quickly annexed the Suebic kingdom, effectively incorporating Galicia into the Visigothic realm. The Suebi, as a distinct political entity, vanished from the historical record. Their people largely remained in Galatia, but their unique identity and their kingdom were absorbed. They faded into the larger Hispano-Roman and Visigothic population. The Visigoths, who eventually adopted Catholicism themselves, largely suppressed the memory of their Suebic predecessors. Later medieval chronicles, written by those who followed the Visigoths, minimized the Suebi's role. For centuries, the Suebi were largely forgotten, overshadowed by the narratives of the larger, more powerful Goths and Vandals. Their memory was preserved mostly through archaeological finds and the occasional brief mention in historical texts. Yet their legacy endures. The Suebi left an indelible mark on the culture, language, and genetic makeup of what is today Galicia and northern Portugal. They were the original founders of medieval Galicia, and their choice to embrace Catholicism shaped the religious future of the entire peninsula. Thank you so much for watching this story about a kingdom that shaped its corner of the world, only to be largely forgotten by history. It reminds us that the narrative of the past is often far richer and more complex than the famous headlines. If you want more stories like this about the forgotten empires, the unsung heroes, and the complex transitions that forged the medieval world, you can head on to our playlist to see more. Until next time, stay curious.